In this video, I will show you step by step to create a walk cycle animation. Before we get started, double-click on the Move tool, the Rotation tool, and the Scale tool, and change the axis orientation to Object. I will start with the legs. You can hide the joints since we will only use the controllers for animation. At frame 1, we will create the first pose. It is the contact pose of the walk cycle. For this pose, we will bring the left foot to the front and the right foot to the back. Hit the S key to create a keyframe after you applied the changes. Bring the hip controller down to where the legs can be relaxed. Hit the S key to create a keyframe. The walk cycle will take 1.5 seconds. Since our project frame rate is 24 frames per second, that means we will use 35 frames for the animation. Shrink down the time slider. At frame 18, we will create the second contact pose of the walk cycle. That is the first frame of the second step. We can simply invert the values on the legs. Copy the translate Z value from the left foot and paste it to the right foot. Hit the S key to create a keyframe and to save that value. Copy the translate Z value from the right foot and paste it to the left foot. Hit the S key to create a keyframe and to save that value. Now, the leg switches in the second step. The third contact pose should be the same as the first contact pose. Hold the Shift key and click on the first frame. Right-click and select Copy. Move to frame 35, right-click and select Paste. Now, the legs move in a cycle. At frame 8, we will create the first pass pose, where the right leg wear past the left leg and move to the front. At frame 11, we will create the up pose, where her head reached the highest spot as she fully extends her legs. Now, we will work on the hip controller and lift her body up. Select the hip controller, create a keyframe at frame 1. At frame 8, move the controller up to bring her body up. Hit the S key to create a keyframe when you are done. At frame 11, move the controller even higher and create a keyframe. At frame 18, which is the second contact pose, the hip controller should stay at the same height as it was in the first contact pose. We can simply duplicate the keyframe. Also duplicate the keyframe to frame 35, which is the third contact pose. At frame 25, we will create the second pass pose, and you can reference the first pass pose to create it. At frame 28, we will create the second up pose, and you can reference the first up pose to create it. The hip controller should at the same height on the first and the second pass pose, so we can copy the values to frame 25. Same for the second up pose. Now, as she walks, her body will shift up and down. We will start working on the torso. When she uses her left leg supporting the weight, her torso will shift to the left. When the right leg is supporting the weight, shift her torso to the right. At frame 8 and frame 11, when she shifts weight to the left, we can rotate the hip controller in the opposite direction. Same at frame 25 and frame 28. The chest controller, on the other side, rotates in the same direction as the torso tilted. Now, we will work on the right foot. When her weight shifts to the left leg, her right leg will stretch to the right to keep balance. At the first pass pose and the first up pose, move the right foot controller to the right. At the first and the second contact pose, we can bring her right foot to the center. Now, we will work on the left foot. At frame 1, 8, 11, and 18, bring her left foot to the center. At frame 25, as she lifts up her left foot, bring the foot to the left. Same at frame 28. At frame 35, the third contact pose, bring her left foot to the center. Now we created the swing animation on her legs. Select the hip controller, and we will polish the motion path of the keyframes. Go to Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. Select all keyframes and apply the ease. It will smooth the hip animation. Check each channel's motion path. The Translate X curve indicates how the hip shifts left and right when she walks. We can smooth the curve by rotating the tangent on the keyframes. The Translate Y curve indicates how the hip lifts up and down when she walks. Smooth the curve a little bit. The Rotate Z curve indicates how the hip rotates to the side when she walks. Select a right foot controller, and we will polish its motion path. Go to the graph editor, select all keyframes and apply the easies. The translate X curve indicates the right foot shifts right and left. At frame 25, 28, and frame 35, bring the right foot to the center. The translate Y curve indicates the foot lift up and down when she walks. At some frames, the foot went off the floor plan. We can zero out its translate Y value to fix that. The translate Z curve indicates the foot lift forward and backward. Select a left foot controller, and we will polish its motion path. Go to the graph editor, select all keyframes, and apply the easies. The translate X curve looks good. The translate Y curve looks good as well. We can smooth the translate Z curve a little bit. Now, the feet move on a nice path. Select the chest controller, in graph editor, select all keyframes and apply the easies. The chest controller only has the rotation Z value. It indicates how the chest rotates to the side when she walks, and the motion path looks good. Now, let's work on the arms. At frame 1, her left foot is in the front, so I will bring her right hand to the front to keep in balance. Select both hand controllers, copy the first keyframe, and paste it to frame 35. At frame 18, reverse the values on the arms. At frame 8, when her torso shifts to the left, we can bring her right arm to the right to keep balance. At frame 25, we can bring her left arm to the left to keep balance. Same at frame 28. At frame 8 and 11, on the pass and up pose, adjust the left hand's position and create a keyframe to block the changes. Select her right arm controller at frame 11, move it to the right and create a keyframe. At frame 25 and 28, on the second pass and up pose, adjust the right hand's position and create a keyframe to block the changes. Now we created the arm swing animation. Let's rotate the wrist to soften the arm. Go to the pass and up pose, rotate the left hand towards the character. We'll do the same thing on the right hand. The arms look better now. Since the eyeball's aiming to the eye controller, make sure the controller is always placed in front of her face. Let's add some rotate value to the foot. At the first contact pose, rotate the left foot up. At frame 3, zero out the rotation and create a keyframe so the foot can hit the ground earlier. At frame 18, the second contact pose, rotate the right foot up. At frame 20, zero out the rotation and create a keyframe so the right foot can hit the ground earlier. At frame 18, rotate the left foot before it is lifted up. Hold that rotation value at the passing pose. At frame 35, we can copy the rotation value from the first frame. Now, the left foot looks good. At the first contact pose and the first pass pose, rotate the right foot. The last frame has the same value as in the first frame. The feet should move along a nice motion trail. Select the left arm controller, go to the graph editor and select all keyframes, apply the easies. Polish the translate X curve a little bit. The translate Y curve looks good. The translate Z curve also looks good. Polish the rotation curves a little bit. Select the right arm controller, go to the graph editor and select all keyframes, apply the easies. The translate X curve looks good. All other curves look good. Now, we created a young lady style walk cycle animation.